Liz, so there's a lot of talk about the opportunities to create brand awareness, to create engagement with new forms of media. You're doing some of that. Tell us some of the interesting recent work you're doing.
Yeah, so two things to highlight. The first is our work for Trolli. Trolli is owned by Ferrara Candy Company in Chicago. And Trolli is a sour gummy marketed to tweens, really young consumers. And it's really edgy work. And so we actually did a partnership this year with James Harden, who's the sort of wacky NBA star, was dating Khloe Kardashian for a little while, and created sort of a series of web vignettes. Around him, we did a bunch of, we actually created a product of his beard. So new package, new product that was specific to 7-Eleven, and then also did a ton of work inside of Snapchat for his game. So we actually did one of the first tie-ins with a sports team and Snapchat, which Snapchat actually uses as a case study for the best way to use their platform.
So how does that work for people who don't really understand? And some people say, you know, Snapchat, it's hard to sort of find an audience. It's kind of hard to sort of find the data or direct the campaign. How do you work with Snapchat?
Yeah, so it's pretty fluid, and that's one of the things we love about it, and we love about Trolli in general, is that stuff disappears. So it's, as a marketer, it's hard to wrap your brain around the idea that you're going to launch something and it's going to vanish. But that's exactly what happens. So things are geo-targeted, so when you go to a game, you're able to access a filter or an app, and then it goes away. And so we're able to look at people when they're, you know, we believe it's most relevant for them, so that's where we tie in data and create sort of these immersive, engaging experiences, and then they go away. And I think Snapchat is pretty difficult to navigate if you're not of that world. And so one of the things we're doing with our clients and our employees actually is encouraging everybody, you got to try this stuff. You got to use it. You can't just intellectualize it. You can't read a white paper on it. You got to actually get on and get dirty.
Cool. And you know, you've been around TV advertising for a few years. A 30-second commercial is still big. TV is big, but yet the consumption has changed so much. Tell us, you know, sort of your thoughts about how, you know, TV advertising is changing, if you would call it even TV advertising, and, you know, the opportunities for brands in this sort of fragmented world.
Yep. So I do believe that there's obviously always going to be a place for video, right? So stories that are told through sight, sound, and motion. I think what hasn't changed and what we haven't innovated fast enough is the method by which you are delivered that content on a set-top box. So your television at home. We just haven't done enough to really make that experience worthwhile, targeted enough, and so that it is relevant. Now, at the same time, we all talk about how much we hate TV advertising, or certainly people in the industry are the first people to use ad blockers, do time shifting of content. And yet, I was on maternity leave, I was out, and I happen to have a 2.5-year-old who loves peanut butter. And in the background, there was an ad for the new Skippy peanut butter balls. And I don't buy Skippy, but I immediately went to multiple grocery stores looking for those. And so when there's something new or there's something to be sort of conveyed, absolute great medium to do it. And I went out and found them. And my son will, you know, basically do anything for a peanut butter ball. So I think the idea of communication is still incredibly relevant. Television is incredibly relevant. It's just a matter of how.
Cool. And Liz, finally, you're the CEO of a small independent. You came from one of the biggest groups at IPG. Tell us about, you know, how you see the changes of what was called an advertising agency and sort of what the demands are now, and sort of what your path is with your company.
Yep. So the best thing I can tell you is that I spent my entire career previous to this inside of a holding company, and I've almost had to unlearn what I knew. And so my favorite Alvin Toffler quote is, you know, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And so we are in this age where sort of you have to keep learning and unlearning, and that is exactly what I've had to do at an independent, because what I would love to have tattooed on everyone's forehead is that there is no they. There is no one that is telling us how it should look, what should happen. And inside of a holding company, you're part of a team, and a holding company construct is all about mitigating risk and sort of pushing the agencies apart in order to maximize the financial opportunities. In an independent, we actually can formulate it in a way that we believe makes sense in order to answer client needs, irrespective of sort of what it, the existing P&Ls or any kind of history or historical sort of convention. So for us and for me, it is really about realizing the opportunity of what's the right thing to do. And the second piece of that is we don't have to make a quarterly number. And that's incredibly freeing.
And what about the demands of technology, though? The whole trading desk scenario and the sort of the high-tech solution to media buying. Can independents do that? Or?
Absolutely. So if you look actually at what the holding companies have done, they have built those trading desk solutions on the backs of third-party software. We can do that too. There's no barrier to entry. Actually, the barriers to entry are quite low. And the access to data, the access to those technologies is there. So it is not actually something that the holding companies sort of historically held that clout. We can actually make deals from a media buying standpoint that we believe the holding companies have a harder time striking, because once they give that deal to WPP or Omnicom, they end up having to give that deal to everyone. And so it's too visible, so that the media companies actually, because they're setting the market, then you're giving that market, you're diminishing your value. For us, they're not changing the market. So we actually can do really interesting, aggressive buys that our holding company counterparts cannot.